the first patient of mine who passed away, I called his, I saw it, I called his wife the next day, and I was very upset. I was crying, and she comforted me.
Really?
Because she had been through this process. They were in their late 80s. He had gone through this process for decades of dealing with the cancer and then the treatment and the consequences after. And they had gone through that in a way that for me, I was here, as a surgeon thinking, okay, I'm gonna fix this. That's my job is to keep you healthy forever. And that was not her perspective at all. Mm-hmm. It was, you helped us and gave us hope for something better, and we are just so grateful for the time that you gave us. And that was so meaningful to me. It changed how I think of my relationship in some ways with my patients. And it's a lot of humility as a doctor to learn.
Dr. Apoorva Ramaswamy, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. There are certain people that have traveled the world for vacation, for pleasure, or leisure, and then there are those who have traveled the world because they've lived all over the world. I understand you're in that second category. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I was actually born in India. We lived in what I affectionately call the Pittsburgh of Is It was a former steel town and industrial capital, and then kind of lost a lot of industry. My father is a surgeon, and he saw that the career, the path, the future that he saw for himself and his family in India was just not capable of encompassing all of his ambitions, all of his dreams. And so he brought our family when I was 4 to the United States. We first moved to San Francisco. My father was doing a fellowship at UCSF. He's a urologist, and it started out just as a research fellowship, and slowly we went from California to Florida, to the University of Florida in Gainesville, which I actually think is a lot like Columbus in a lot of ways, actually. I really like Gainesville. Then from Gainesville, I'm not sure if you're aware, but if you are a foreign-trained doctor, you have to do your residency all over again. And I don't know what people have watched TV shows about being in medicine. That means that residency is a pretty intense time. Sure. And so he did that again in his late 30s with 2 kids. We moved to Michigan, which is where he did it. And I like to think that God moves in mysterious ways, and we never know what's going to happen. What happened was that while he was doing his second whole training again, he actually was part of the first robotic prostate cancer surgery.
Wow.
Which now is how everyone does prostate cancer surgeries, but he got to be in that first team. And since then, he's become one of the world leaders. He is the chairman at Mount Sinai now. So he moved to New York. He's at Mount Sinai, and he's the head of the surgical side of their cancer center now. So it's a really amazing story. I'm so proud of him. I've seen how, we went from, living as a family of 4 and $30,000 to where he's at, and it's so inspiring. And the fact that my brother and I got to see that whole journey because we were, old enough to actually be there for that was really so important to us in learning the value of hard work and the immigrant story in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Is there something specific about India that you miss, something that you realize, wow, in America we're so privileged?
Oh gosh, the value of family is so important, and I think that's the thing that, it's not unique to India, it is unique for me because most of my family is. Vivek's family almost entirely are here in the Midwest in the United States, and we feel so fortunate for that. And that's my one regret, is that we don't have that here for our family. My parents and my brother are all in New York, and we're a smaller family just because it was just the 4 of us growing up and no one else was really here in the United States.
Wow, wow. you mentioned how proud you are of your father's hard work. And a few months ago when Vivek was on, he talked about watching his father go through hardship, whether it was at the GE plant and taking school at night. And of course, that had its own unique story.
Yeah.
Is there anything specifically you observed that maybe there was like a similar lesson that carries you till today?
Oh gosh, he would work. Back then, they didn't have the 100-hour work rules, 80-hour work rules. It was basically unlimited hours. And he always had the sense of having something to prove, both as an immigrant, but also as someone who's doing this later in his life. So he would take all of the pagers, all of the, his co-residence pagers, he would take it all. And he'd done it before. He was extremely good, so he could do it, but he would come home this level of just deep exhaustion. And then he came home and started a company on the side. It was one of the first AI predictive companies for risk of prostate cancer, and just so seeing that depth of hard work and exhaustion, but having the sense that I have more to give, and feeling that need to do something else, to do that extra thing, was just so inspiring.
Do you think, trying to make it, so to speak, into the country was like a similar drive that propelled him to take that character trait into his professional life?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think it's so much, in a lot of ways, he and Vivek remind me of each other. There's this sense of unlimited opportunity and capacity, that if there is something I can do, if there is something important that needs to be done, why not? Why not me? Why shouldn't I do this? There's no sense that we should wait for someone else to fill that role.
Wow. And how did you become a surgeon?
So, unsurprised, or maybe surprising after seeing how hard he worked, I saw everything that my father did, and despite all of the work, there's nothing he would have loved to do more. He loved it so much. He would come home and he would show us videos of his surgeries, and he would talk to us about his patients and what was going on with them, and he would even take us on rounds. And I loved it. I think that was just the ability to connect with people, especially patients who've had cancer, was such an intimate, special, almost holy relationship in a lot of ways, and that was so special to me. And to be able to have that kind of relationship at work, you get to do it, but there's not many of us who in our professional lives get to create those types of relationships while being intellectually stimulated and doing all of these other interesting things that we love. And so for me, that's what drew me to doing this.
Wow, and specifically, talk to us about your in detail, your line of work.
Yeah, so I treat voice and swallowing problems in cancer survivors. So I work at OSU at the James Cancer Center, and my specialty is actually treating a lot of the side effects and the consequences of a lot of our treatments, to be honest, the cancer, but also the treatment. We have become so good, we've been so blessed over the past few decades in learning how to treat cancer, how to keep people alive. But now we've been seeing all the ways that they are not able to live the quality of life that they were leading. They can't speak to their family members anymore. They have not sat down and eaten at a dinner table in years, some of them. And that is what really drew me, this idea that they have gone through the thing we fear most, the thing that is so scary, and yet some of them regret that because they are not leading the lives that they wanted to lead. And so that's my dream, my goal, is to be able to help bring them closer to that.
So are you treating patients that have gone through cancer treatment already, and this is like a little bit of like a side effect, and now you have to work
Mostly, yeah. So many of my patients are anywhere from 1 year to decades after their treatment. They're still dealing with the consequences. Some of them haven't been able to eat in years.
And how are you able to help them?
So combination of surgeries. We do a lot of therapy. I work very closely with a big team, and we're so lucky at OSU, at the James, to have a team like this. We work with dietitians, we work with swallow therapists, physical therapists, and then I, as a surgeon, as a doctor, everyone is a puzzle. The cancer, the treatment affects everyone in different ways, and so it's a lot about customizing the treatment for them. Some people, their lips are no longer, able to work. They can't hold liquids in their mouth. Something as simple as that, which does not sound so debilitating, but it means that, when they're talking to their friends, when they go out to dinner, they're drooling. And to them, that sense of the effect on their sense of self and identity, it's embarrassing, can make a huge thing. And I can, in 5 minutes in clinic, inject a little bit of filler into their lips and fix that.
Wow.
And it makes such a big difference. And then there's bigger surgeries, sometimes we have to go in and take out scar tissue and all of these other things. But it's this whole range, and I think that's also what I love, is that it's understanding each patient and what is affecting them and their problems, and then seeing what I can do to help fix that.
And there have been patients who were not able to sit at a kitchen table and not eat, and you were able to help them?
Yeah. So one of my favorite stories, this patient, she and I have known each other. I think I started treating her back when I was pregnant with our second son. So that was more than 3 years ago now. She had not eaten by mouth in 5 years because her entire esophagus had been scarred shut by the cancer and the treatment. And so people had told her, there's really not much we can do about this at this point. You're either going to be on a G-tube, a feeding tube, for the rest of your life, or we can do a surgery to remove your voice box and then reconnect it. But then she would not be able to speak again. And that was not a compromise she was willing to make. And so she came to me kind of as a last ditch. And we were actually able to reconnect, first of all, her esophagus. So we were able to get through that scar tissue, reconnect her esophagus, get slowly over the course of months, expand it. And then at the same time, we had to treat the problems in her body that had caused such bad scarring to happen. So at the same time, we were medically treating her and surgically treating her. And at the same time, she was relearning to swallow, because for 5 years, she hadn't eaten anything by mouth. Her throat, her tongue, everything had gotten weak. And so she was working at the same time with our swallow therapists, relearning that process. And, it was one of my favorite things is when patients come and we get to take out their G-tube. And it's just the most amazing thing, because that's the celebration. That is when we know, we did it. That this patient who was totally had not eaten anything, now we were able to take out her G-tube. She was so happy when she got to eat her first Snickers bar. She ate her first Thanksgiving with her family in years. So it was just one of the more moving stories. And we're very fortunate that she's not the only one who's had similar kind of stories.
And you're talking about helping someone that has such a ripple effect on the whole family, how they bond together. I mean, it happens at the kitchen table.
Yeah.
Tremendous. So you mentioned that this area of life, it could be what we fear the most. Can you talk to us about how you have these critical conversations, especially about people's mortality? It's like one of those things we try not to think about, but you have to think about when it looks at you in the face. So talk to us about that.
With cancer survivors, I'm not bringing up something new to them. They've already been thinking about it. And so I try to keep it pretty frank in a lot of ways, while understanding kind of what is most important to them. I think when we talk, the most important thing to me is them and what they want. And that can sometimes be different from what is the most medically effective thing, because some people say, I need to eat by mouth. I need to be able to eat my scrambled eggs and my Snickers bars, and that for me is life. If I can't do that, I don't see a point in all of this. And so some people, and then we talk about, okay, well, if that is the most important thing to you, but we know that you're aspirating, food is going down into your lungs, it is a risk for developing pneumonia. Is there a world in which we can say, okay, you get most of your calories from your tube, but we optimize your swallowing enough that you can at least somewhat safely get your scrambled eggs down. And so you get that joy while minimizing risk. And so it's the patient and their needs are always the number one thing for me. And I think that's been one of the things that we as a field have learned, is that, we used to think, well, if things are going down the wrong way, they can't eat by mouth. That should be, they can never eat by mouth again. And what I've learned from this process, and we can all understand intuitively, is we all take risks.
Yes.
And we learn, what is worth a risk. Driving is a risk.
It's life. Yeah.
Life is a risk, but there are things that are worth it for each of us and things that are not. Skydiving is not worth it for me, but driving is.
Yes.
And I can't imagine losing that. And in the same way that someone might not be able to imagine losing the ability to eat.
One of the questions I always have, and this is in your line of work, but it's really in the entire medical world, is this looks like tension, and you'll share with me if you think it is or not, guiding a patient to what their needs are, sharing the risks, and the doctor telling the patient what they're comfortable with. There's always this struggle, like, I don't want this to be on my back, right? The physician, the clinician, the doctor, but you're also trying to help the patient get as much of what they want. So talk to us about balancing the two, where you're not putting yourself out there where they could come back and say, well, you told me da-da-da, and then they did this. Talk to us about that fine line.
It is the most difficult thing, and I think when you have it just comes down to having the long conversations that really help understand what a patient needs. I've been very fortunate that I don't need to, I try not to stuff, as many patients into a day as possible, just because, we always have all these pressures from the system and everything. But whenever I have a patient in front of me, if they need that long conversation, we have that long conversation. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is really them understanding the risks, the benefits. And I think of my job as educating them, telling them about the risks and benefits. And I can give them, my thoughts based on my experience of what I think is where that risk-benefit analysis would weigh out for me. And I tend to be, honestly, a very risk-averse person. As a surgeon, I'm someone who doesn't usually like to operate unless a patient really wants it, because there's no world in which I'm going to be. That's not the kind of doctor I want to be. I want to do what's right for them. And so that's kind of how we have that conversation. And so I've had a patient who came to me after pretty much everyone told him, you'll never eat again. Unfortunately, we have a lot of patients like this. There's nothing we can do. And often that's true. There really isn't much. But sometimes there's little things that we can optimize. And even giving them that hope of, okay, maybe if we optimize this a little, maybe you'll be able to have sips of water. And to them, that sense of hope and the feeling that someone's on their team. And we tried, and maybe it failed, maybe it didn't work. And then they're able to say, okay, well, we tried that, it didn't work. Helps them go through that understanding of reconciliation, that process, in a way that just telling them, someone you have no relationship, that there's nothing I can do, tends to be very alienating for them from the health medical system in general.
So you mentioned two things. You mentioned hope and team.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where I wanted to go. And I'm going to reference another episode that our great producer, John, recorded for us and Matt. And that was an episode, I've referenced this countless times throughout our 60 plus episodes, but it's just because of how powerful it was. It was an interview we did with Dr. Lewin Fahn, Chair, Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Health at the Ohio State University. And we're going to do a live recording with them, a live event in
amazing.
July. And we talked so he's actually leading the Jeffrey Schottenstein Resiliency Program, where they're going to be studying resiliency. What are the things that help people recover with mental illness? And what are those things, and how do we teach them to people ahead of time so they have those tools in life?
Amazing.
So one of his top two was social connection with people, that we are down when we are alone. And I would seem to think team is part of that social connection. And the power of hope. I want to know from, he's obviously talking from the mental side of it. but there's this mind-body connection, and I want to hear your thoughts from the medical side, the body, if you will, side of it, how those two things work together, and actually how it could change the outcome of this patient.
You know, hope is so important. I don't know if it helps in terms of my surgical outcomes so much, but it does help with the therapy. So if someone is relearning how to swallow after years of not being able to swallow, having that hope and that vision of a future that is compelling to them, that is beautiful to them, that is worth working for, is how they will then restart building those muscles, relearning that, putting in that work, because it is hard work. You know, it's learning all of those skills again, especially because they're things we learned when we were 2, 3 years old. And that sense of frustration that I should know how to do this. I can't believe that this basic thing is difficult for me. To bring back that humility and that sense of hope is so critical for that process. And I think I feel very grateful that we work with therapists, swallow therapists, who are so good at instilling that and giving people that sense of, you know, what that future that awaits them potentially.
Would you say, for maybe not for everyone, but perhaps for some people, maybe some life coaching or emotional wellness counseling should be part of the treatment plan for this reason?
You know, I think there is, this is a weird thing to say, but not really. I mean, I treat people, the patients I treat have had cancer, and the problems I treat are chronic problems. I treat them until they pass away. And so I think in some ways the thing that would be most important would be almost a religious counseling. To have that sense of hope,
perspective
for the next step too. I think we all have this sense that we know intellectually there will be a time when we're no longer alive, but having that sense of hope and vision of, I was here on this earth and I did something important, and that I'm valued, and that it was a beautiful time, and have that sense of it for the next step is so important. And I think it's the biggest gift that I cannot do as a doctor, but I think each of us needs it for our lives.
Holistic. It's not just isolated in one pocket area.
Yeah.
Wow. And if I didn't know that you're treating patients until they pass on, just out of curiosity, how do you not bring that home with you?
It's so difficult. It is so difficult. These patients become, my friends over the course of years. I know what's important to them. I know their favorite meal. I know, you know, what they like to cook at Thanksgiving. It is extremely, extremely difficult. And some days there's not much we can do. But the first patient of mine who passed away, I called I saw it. I called his wife the next day, and I was very upset. I was crying, and she comforted me.
Really?
Because she had been through this process. They were in their late 80s. He had gone through this process for decades of dealing with the cancer and then the treatment and the consequences after. And they had gone through that in a way that, for me, I was here, you know, as a surgeon thinking, okay, I'm going to fix this. You know, that's my job is to keep you healthy forever. And that was not her perspective at all. It was, you helped us and gave us hope for something better, and we are just so grateful for the time that you gave us. And that was so meaningful to me. It changed how I think of my relationship in some ways with my patients. And it's a lot of humility as a doctor to learn.
Call it the attitude of gratitude. Something that maybe my generation could do themselves a favor. But yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
And I like the you know, obviously as a rabbi, but, you know, really everyone to have that, you know, stress on faith, purpose, meaning. This life is temporary, but there's a much bigger picture of what we do and what we leave behind. And,
Exactly.
all right, switching topics. So now you're on this incredible journey.
Yeah.
And I know these decisions, if someone in the family runs for big office, it's a family decision.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Well, it comes down to what we were talking about before. In our family, if both of us have grown up, if we see a problem, we think it's our duty to do something about it. And we look at the gifts that God has given us and see how we can help. And I've been so blessed to have a husband who has such a strong sense of values, of moral courage, and if he has the tools, I think it's our purpose both for each other, to support each other in every way, to help make our contribution to the world and help in our gratitude to God for the gifts that we've been given.
Yeah, it's interesting because Vivek mentioned that victimhood is a choice. So you see problems, which side of it are you on? Side of the problem, side of the solution?
Exactly. And I know what side you're on. I think.
So how do you do it all? Mother, doctor, supportive wife?
Well, you don't do everything all at the same time,
right,
and at the same intensity. And I think that's something you learn. We're all learning is where to push the accelerator at any given time.
Some things will just have to wait or pass and prioritize.
Exactly. And life, hopefully, we'll have time to give everything its due course. And so, at some points in my life, I was working a lot more, and right now, I'm still operating. I'm still doing it, but But I'm taking that time to spend time with my family, my children, and help as much as I can with the campaign. So you just see what you need to do.
And what about? I know that one of Vivek's things that he likes to stress a lot, which obviously speaks a lot to me, is family being the most powerful form of governance. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
So talk about the family's involvement, yourself, your two boys on the campaign trail.
Right, it's evolved. This time around, thankfully, because it's in-state, we've been able to, and the kids are a little bit older, so they have school and they have their own commitments, right? We've been able to be based mostly in Columbus, and then they come out, at least, every couple weeks we do that. But the most important part for us is that them and their upbringing are strong and stable. That's never been something that we could compromise on, no matter what journey, we go on together. And especially now, they're 3, they're 5. They're starting to test the boundaries, and that now the governance part is really coming into play.
Absolutely.
Setting rules, making sure people do their responsibilities, and all that stuff. Exactly.
Yeah, and that's I like that balance, because you want them to take pride in what their parents are doing, but they also have to get their footing, and you can't wait until it's too late.
No.
Wow, I mean, it's such a daunting idea to be in the public eye with all the scrutiny.
Yeah.
How do you tune out the background noise?
It's really helpful when you just don't see it. You just don't get exposed.
It's interesting. A few months ago, actually, it was it October, I think, or late September. We had Governor DeWine was on, and I asked him the same question. He's like, "Well, I don't really turn on social media."
Yeah, he's wise. He's been doing this a while. He knows what he's doing. I think that's something I definitely learned, and I'm grateful. I'm much happier since I started doing that.
So, you think about yourself as a successful surgeon, Vivek, who's had lots of success in different industries. As he put, minus the stand-up comedy, which we had a great time talking about briefly. We kind of somehow went down that rabbit hole, but funny. It did lead to a success with the notepad, so that was a nice takeaway.
Exactly.
Given your success and Vivek's success, and really the journey that each of you had, really role modeled by your parents, accomplishing and fulfilling the lives of the American dream, how do you see yourself setting up your children to be able to have that same journey if they're growing up with potentially in the governor's mansion or wherever it is that they are, whatever that upbringing will look like? How do you make sure that you get to set them up to have that same path in their own way so they could also live the American dream?
I think in a lot of ways, neither Vivek nor I think of this concept as success as a box to be checked. Our lives are a journey, and at any moment, you need to be doing the things that are important. It's that sense of duty. Are you using your capacities to the best of your abilities? Are you taking care of yourself to the best of your abilities? Are you taking care of your family and doing your roles as a family members to the best of your abilities? And at any moment, that is kind of how we measure our success, not, external accomplishments. And I think that's something we're trying to teach our children, is that you can be a success as a 5-year-old as long as you are doing your responsibilities. There's nothing outside that your parents are going to say, "Oh, son, you finally succeeded." It's all about this journey and how you are traveling it.
I like that. Every age and stage, there's a success for you right there.
Yeah.
And that could come as whatever job you're in, whatever industry, whatever profession, how high or low. It's what your lane is. Are you
Exactly. Are you fulfilling your duties in life?
I love that. That's great. Talk to us about the highs and lows. I mean, the thing about running for office, when you win, you score big, and when things don't work out, it's such crushing, partially because you work so hard on it, it's so public. But, actually, when we had on, slightly different topic, but very similar, we had on Ohio State coach Ryan Day.
Oh, yeah.
And that was he's just such a, what a gentleman and leader and mentor. We talked about sometimes when the players, they score a big touchdown, they want to spike the ball, and they want to do all these crazy moves and dances. And he said, "Listen, you guys still got a game to play."
Yeah.
And when you get down, there's still time on the clock.
Exactly.
Right? So you can't let your emotions get you here. You're not playing with emotions, you're playing football, right? So talk to us about, in this specific capacity, about not letting the highs get to you or the lows taking you down.
I think in some ways it comes back to what we were just talking about, is that we all have these different parts of our lives. And as long as you're able to get that fulfillment, and you know that you did everything you could in that endeavor, and you did the best you could, and we thank God we still have our family, and we still have our health. We're so blessed that those things in the end, it's all good. I, in my career, see people who have had so much more hardship. Vivek, in his journey, traveling around the state, talking to people, we have seen people who have gone through real hardship and who are going through it. And our sense of failure or achievement is what we can do for them in helping them improve it. That's the role of a public servant. It's the role of a physician. And so that's where the disappointment comes from. In our lives, we're so blessed. We have a beautiful house, a beautiful family to go home to, and everything's wonderful. And whatever goes on in the news, that doesn't bother us so much as what really matters.
Yeah, no, that's such an important perspective. I want to talk to you about national unity. We are actually in the middle on the show. We're doing a unity and diversity series.
I love that.
And to me, as a rabbi, we deal with diversity all the time, differences of opinions in Jewish law or whatever it is. And are we trying to be right or do right? And that's a very important value. So having a very diverse group of guests, obviously within a certain parameter, is something that really what led me to want to do this diversity and unity series. How do you see the country getting more unified, national unity?
I honestly think things like this. We experienced that when we were in school. You by definition, you have friends, or you meet people who are of different beliefs than you, who have come from different perspective, different political beliefs, and you know each other. You're all going through the same journey of doing your calculus, or you're going through similar journeys together, and learning how we are so similar, and our journeys are so similar, but also that we all mostly want the same things. We want people to be doing well. We want our earth to be beautiful. We want it to be a good home for everyone. And so we all have these different goals. And as long as we know that you are coming, you want the same things as I do. We might have different perspectives on how to get there. I think that's the most important thing that we have to remember about this whole.
We had Congressman Greg Landsman from Cincinnati, and he talked about you don't really get to know someone until you have dinner in their house. Try doing that now with colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And I know, and we talked about this.
It's that breaking bread. It's so important.
Yeah, right.
Eating.
Exactly. For sure.
Eating and talking.
One of the things that I talked about with Vivek was about his trip to the DNC, which I know
Yeah.
that was a fun-filled trip, to put it
Yeah.
mildly. And one of the interesting takeaways, maybe the more positive ones, was the interaction with CNN's anchor Van Jones,
I know.
which was a story in of its own.
Yeah.
So two questions. Number one, from your standpoint, I think about it like as a father, as a husband, if you see your child or spouse going through something, like, I'd rather be the one going through that. Don't put it on them, put it on me.
Yeah.
And then you have to see Vivek go through that. A, what was it like from your standpoint? How did you stay strong? And B, what are some of the takeaways, the positive ones? And do you think there's a way to educate and replicate that to the broader public?
I think in some ways, what I think is so wonderful and beautiful about Vivek, one of the reasons why I think I'm so supportive of him being on this journey, is because he is so good at being humble, truly humble about his ideas, about what his views are for the future. And I think that comes across when he talks to people who disagree with him, because he's able to really understand their perspective. He's not there to make them look bad, to show that he is smarter. He is there to understand where they are coming from, see where the differences are, and where they can actually, how we can all get to the same place together. And I think that's been so wonderful in this journey. And in some ways, we all have different strengths. And you were mentioning, I wish I could take this hardship on for, my spouse. In some ways, I am so grateful, because I know that he is so strong, and I know that he is the perfect person for that job, that I have no desire to be in his seat.
Yeah.
He's very scared of blood. I don't think he has any desire to be in my seat, but we both have our strengths in our family.
That's so interesting, yeah. Because I had the same thing with, doctors, and like, I just don't know how you do that. And then they would tell you, like, how do you broker deals, real estate? Don't you get headaches from all that stuff? And you're right, everyone does have their thing, and
Exactly.
it's by design.
Exactly.
And when you see people, just the nature of politics, I can't help but think of it as, I hate to say this, but it's just the way I see it. It's kind of like tackle football. It's the job you signed up for. The political arena could get hard. It shouldn't be, but just that's the reality. We wish it was more policy focused than personal. It's just horrible. It doesn't necessarily set a good example for our children, but it is what it is. How do you, I know you said that you don't hang out too much looking at the news, but
Yeah.
I guess certain things are just, get through anyways. How do you just stay calm, stay collected, not let that throw you off?
I think it's really a sense of knowing that does not reflect the truth for everyone. Most people in the world are kind and good and want the best for each other and for us. And that really is helpful. That the most hateful things that I can see in social media are not representative of the reality for most people. I mean, who knows how many of those are even real people and not bots, looking for engagement. And just knowing that is so helpful, because I get to see real people. I get to treat them every day. I get to see the children my son goes to school with and their parents. We are interacting in the actual world, and I think that's so important, to keep the real connections. And then everything else, that's extra.
So I'm always amazed by the good and the evil that comes with social media, and I'm pretty careful. I mean, a lot of my stuff I actually outsource to my editor.
Yeah.
I don't want to get busy with that.
No.
It's gonna throw me off.
Yeah.
And just to keep that the emotional relationship, person to person, soul to soul, is as focused.
And it's designed to be addictive.
Exactly. Those people who make them don't let their kids on them.
I know. I mean, not so much for even kids. For myself, I know how much I can tolerate in a day before I know it's not good for my brain.
Yeah.
So.
And it's interesting, just like, not to get too off on a tangent, but like the way it's set up, all the dopamine hits and the way the algorithm goes into your feed, and then they could switch into someone else's feed and they could just manipulate. And that's how, obviously since October 7th, we've seen so much of this disinformation and brainwashing of people that there are these vulnerable people that are just getting so much misinformation, and it comes from TikTok, and I don't know the solution, but
and Vivek talks about this. It's in an open marketplace. It's our job to put the right message out there, and to use all the tools to make it as successful as the bad messages.
Right.
And
Once
that's
it's
the best
out there,
we can do.
you got to
Use the tools. If the tools are available, you should be using them.
Yeah, I almost see it like it's a car. You could drive safely and get from point A to point B, or otherwise.
Exactly.
So in the event, I know you're on this journey to hopefully for Vivek to be the governor and yourself to be the first lady. I know what he's going to want to do for all the things that he's been talking about, but as potentially a first lady of Ohio, is there a certain cause you would like to focus on that, if I'm in this position, what can I give back to our state?
I think the things that are so important to me are, as you might expect, health for our elderly, health for our children are so important, because that's really where so much of our health care goes in. Children, we have the opportunity to help ensure health for the rest of their lives as long as we teach them the right habits, give them the good infrastructure. We can make such a big difference for the decades to come in the state of Ohio. And similarly for the elderly, that's where so much of our healthcare dollars in Ohio are going in. It's for this population, helping to support them, helping them get that quality of life and accomplish their goals for themselves is so important to me.
Yeah, it's interesting you remind me of, and this was said on record, so I could quote him, Dr. David Lieberman, one of the premier experts in human behavior and research, talked about many times, can't say this always, but many times, with mild depression or mild anxiety, it can be treated with diet, sleep, and exercise.
It's so important, and those are the background for everything. I mean, I tell that to my cancer survivors when I'm treating their swallowing problems, that if you're not getting enough protein, if you're not getting enough exercise, then there's the things that I'm going to be doing are just going to be picking up pennies in front of a train. That the important thing that's actually going to keep you thriving and happy are going to be the things that are done outside of the OR.
Yeah. And in our closing segment, I understand a few weeks ago, or maybe by now a little over a month ago, your family suffered the loss of Vivek's grandmother. And in closing, just want to offer the opportunity if you could share perhaps a memory or a lesson or something that you hope continues in your family, and perhaps something to share with our audience as well.
Yeah, I am just so grateful. So Vivek's grandmother, she died almost a week after her 100th birthday.
Wow. Yeah.
She had 7 children, and almost all of them were around her during this whole process. This whole many decades, they all came to this country, lived close to each other. They raised their children close to each other. Now that she had great-grandchildren, and they're all living close to each other. It's such a tight community. And I think the ability for this one woman alone coming from a different country to be able to generate this beautiful community around her in this, it's just so incredible, and speaks to the power of religion, of family, to unify, to give meaning. I mean, we were so blessed that our children got to spend so much time with her and get to see her strength, and that's just been the most amazing part of it.
Wow, what a tribute. Thank you. And thank you for coming on, joining us on this program. It's been an honor to sit down with you and hear from such a, broad parts of, different parts of life, and very much appreciate that. Also want to thank our incredible crew, John and Matt at Page Tech, and our fantastic editor, Gideon. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you again for joining the program, and looking forward to seeing all of you next time.
To listen to all Colote episodes and see upcoming guests, visit colotepodcast.com. We are also on all podcast players. Type in Colote on iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean, and Amazon. Share with your friends, and please make sure to give us a 5-star review. Colote is a project of the Columbus Community Kollel, a full-time Jewish learning center in Bexley, staffed with high-caliber Torah scholars. Ever since 1995, boys, girls, men, and women from all backgrounds and affiliations have found many opportunities to connect with Torah and mitzvos at the Kollel. Whether it's a study partner, an engaging lesson, or a program, The Kollel is your one-stop shop for all your Jewish learning. If you want to know how you can benefit from the Kollel, visit thekollel.org. That is TheKollel.org, and forever be inspired.